Welcome everyone to our expert panel, Preparing Public Professionals and Associations for New Challenges, an Australasian Perspective. I'm Holly Donaldson, the Executive Director of the Council of Academic Public Health Institutions Australasia, or CAPIA. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we, the Council of Academic Public Health Institutions Australasia, the Australian Health Promotion Association, or AHPA, and the Public Health Association of Australia, PHAA, acknowledge the traditional custodians throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and First Nation peoples today. We also recognise Indigenous peoples across Australasia and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And Rebecca Zozel and I live and work on the lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and recognise that their lands were never ceded. I welcome you to share the Indigenous lands in which you live and work in the chat function. I also like to personally thank all First Nations peoples for the wisdom and leadership they continue to provide to public health. So what are we doing today? So this expert panel is co-hosted by CAPIA, AHPA and PHAA, and this is a wonderful partnership and a demonstration of the power and collaboration of public health and health promotion. This event is part of the second edition of the Global Public Health Week, which was initiated by the World Federation of Public Health Associations. And across the week, there's over 100 events. Most of those are hybrid and are being held to explore the theme of building an equitable, sustainable and resilient health system. So this is an incredible opportunity to showcase, to learn, discuss, and importantly, to inform action for better health for all. And today's event is directly aligned to the day's focus, preparing public health professionals and associations for new challenges. But before we get into that, we wanted to take a moment to recognise the incredible contribution all our members provide, including all of you on the webinar today, not only to our associations, but also to the practice of public health more broadly. They volunteer their abundant expertise, time and energy to enhance public health policies, programs and initiatives to better serve our communities. So thank you very, very much for that. Today, through the panel, we have set questions and they are curated into 4 themes. The first one being the current state. What are the challenges we're facing and across Australasia, and what opportunities exist? Preparing for our desired future state. How can we as individuals and also as associations better prepare for these future challenges? Future-proofing our workforce. What is required and what is the role of accreditation and credentialing to increase global portability of degrees and of individuals as well? And lastly, collaboration. How can associations work together to advocate for greater investment and action to improve public health? A little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. So it's a 90-minute webinar. It's a webinar format, which means that you won't be able to hear anything else other than us. So there's no participant video or microphone. And we'd like to thank the Lung Foundation Australia for sharing their Zoom webinar account to enable this. And again, it's another example of collegiality in our space. So today's format is preset questions, as I mentioned, for the first hour, and then audience questions for the remainder. And we'll do our best to target that time to have your say. And our panelists today come from wearing at least 2 hats. So they have their association leadership hat, but they also come as individuals, as public health professionals with their own interests and expertise. And given that, we have tried to target the questions accordingly to give you a rich and diverse perspective on the various questions. And so we do invite you to ask your questions via the Zoom Q&A function, and we'll do our best to have these answered throughout the session. And Croaky are live tweeting today. So please also feel free to tweet, and in the chat there is some links to both the panelists today, the public health associations, and also some of the Twitter handles. And the hashtag is GPHW, so Global Public Health Week. And please feel free to tag our associations in. Finally, the panel is being recorded and will be available in the next week or so to all registrants, not just those of you here today. So as I said, I'm Holly, the Executive Director of CAFIA, and co-moderating today is Rebecca Zozal, who is the Executive Officer of ARPA, and it has been wonderful working with you, Rebecca, on this. And our fantastic panellists, we're very excited to have the three of them here with us today. They are Professor Rebecca Ivers, Dr. Gemma Crawford, and Adjunct Professor Taran Wimarantri. So firstly, as a very short bio, and they'll be doing an introduction on themselves as well. But Rebecca, Professor Ivers, is the chair of CAFIA and also head of school at the University of New South Wales. She's an epidemiologist by training and has a special interest and expertise in injury prevention and has had numerous leadership roles in this space. So Rebecca was also at the George Institute for 20 years before joining UNSW, so have some very interesting perspectives there. Dr. Gemma Crawford is the National President for ARPA, and she's a course coordinator for postgraduate health promotion and public health at Curtin University. She also is a wonderful pracademic, so a practitioner academic, which I love that term, and has that wonderful intersectionality of being able to deliver in both of those spaces for improved result. And finally, and certainly not lastly, is Adjunct Professor Taran Wimarantri. He is the president of PHAA, as I'm sure many of you know, and he's also an adjunct with the University of Western Australia. Taran was a recipient of the Order of Australian Medal, so he is an AM, and that was awarded last year. Congratulations on that. And this is for his significant service to public health administration over the years. Taran has served as the Chief Health Officer for the Northern Territory and has played numerous leadership roles both locally and internationally on that scale. So next, what we would like to do is invite our panelists to give a brief overview. I need to do this. I will stop sharing my screen as well. Stop share. Okay, great. So firstly, we'd like to invite Professor Rebecca Ivers to give an overview of her perspectives in this space.
Thank you, Holly, and hello, everyone. Welcome to this seminar. It's wonderful to see so many people online. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm here today on the lands of the Bidjigal people. I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of the lands I'm on and the lands that all of us are on, and to the ongoing contribution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have made to learning systems, to scientific knowledge, and to public health over many, many thousands of years. So, as Holly said, I'm the chair of CAFIA, the Council of Academic Public Health Institutions Australasia. I know it's a mouthful. For those of you who don't know what CAFIA is, it's basically the peak body for public health institutions in Australia. So basically all the universities that teach public health in Australasia. We have 39 member institutions, all of which are advancing public health education, research and workforce development. As Holly said, I've also got a number of other hats. I'm the head of the School of Population Health at University of New South Wales. I'm also a member of the board of the Australasian Injury Prevention Network, of which organisation I've been president twice, and really in that role, again, it's a public health role, advocating for injury prevention globally, and I'm very happy to see some of our injury prevention colleagues here online today. But coming back to CAFIA, CAFIA is a really important institution. As I said, it's the peak body representing public health training in universities. Our main objectives are professional development, advocacy and partnership. And for professional development, actually one of those things is seminars just like this, where we bring people together and talk about workforce training. We run events. One of the very important events that we run is the Teaching and Learning Forum, which this year is going to be hosted in South Australia, the University of South Australia, by Associate Professor Catherine Baldock. So September 21st to 22nd, I can see Holly has very happily put that slide up, just a bit of advertising around the Teaching and Learning Forum. These kind of things are really important for workforce training. And really, I guess until I came to UNSW, I really wasn't aware of the really broad range really excellent work that Kathy does in this space. The Teaching and Learning Forum is absolutely unique in terms of a place where academic public health practitioners can come to and actually share learnings, innovations, methodologies around the teaching of public health in universities in Australasia. So I'd really strongly encourage everyone to get there. It's really important. We obviously also do a range of other things. We have at the moment a big ticket item that Kathy has at the moment is preparing the third edition of public health competencies. These are critical as they inform public health curricula across the region. As you know, there's many ways in which universities have to accredit their programs, including 7-year program reviews through TEXA and other internal program reviews. But we also have these public health competencies put out by CAFIA, which we can benchmark our programs against. So really, we're in the process of just doing that, and that's defining capabilities, knowledge, skills, and application public health graduates need to effectively contribute to the workforce, both for existing and emerging public health needs. So I'll wrap up. We also do have some advocacy and communication subgroups as well, which again is working on advocating for public health, both in state and Commonwealth agencies. And this year we're going to be working on advocacy around increased investment in public health training, research and education. And that subgroup's led by Associate Professor Jane Frawley at UTS. So we've got a really engaged team at CAFIA. I would encourage anyone that's interested in getting involved in putting a hand up, get in contact with Holly Donaldson and myself, because we need people to be involved in all of our subgroups and to actually make a difference. That's all from CAFIA. We'll hand over now to Gemma, I think.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. It's really lovely to be with you all today. So I'll make this quick, as I usually struggle to get the shape of opening remarks right, so bear with me. I come to you from Bulu on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. And I acknowledge the continuing cultures and knowledges of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are the original custodians of the land now known as Australia, and whose sovereignty has never been ceded. So as mentioned in the introduction, my name's Gemma and I'm a public health academic. Like Rebecca and Tara, and I wear several hats. And for the past 20-something years, I've had the privilege of working with many of you across non-government organisations, academic institutions, the private sector, government and civil society in roles spanning teaching, research, leadership, advocacy, practice and policy. And my work resides in the intersection of the social, the political and the personal. Currently, as Holly said, I'm a senior academic at the Curtin School of Population Health, and in this role I lecture and supervise undergrad and postgrad students, convene courses for postgraduate health promotion and public health courses, including the Master of Public Health, and I'm a researcher with the Collaboration for Evidence, Research and Impact in Public Health. And I reflect that I've had the good fortune to work with hundreds of students over the last couple of decades to build their capabilities as emerging practitioners. And through this process have heard of their hopes and concerns for the future of the public's health. Mostly, I think I'm in your esteemed company today, as for the last 10 years, I've held a role as board member, chair and president of the Australian Health Promotion Association. And I believe it's the integral role that our associations play in representation, support, capacity building and connection that brings us together today. I choose to be part of as many associations and organisations as I can, as I support what can be achieved with a critical mass of like-minded individuals who are not afraid of frank and fearless conversations and critical dialogue towards shared aims. So I suspect most of you are familiar with our work, but in case you're not, for over 30 years, ARPA has provided strategic and operational leadership for health promotion and prevention in Australia. Our vision is a healthy, equitable Australia through leadership, advocacy and workforce development for health promotion practice, research, evaluation and policy. We've got 6 current strategic priorities which shape our work through until around about 2024. And these are to advocate for health, to specifically promote the health promotion profession and our members, to build the professional capacity of our membership, to support career pathways in health promotion, promote equity, diversity and inclusion, and provide responsible and sustainable governance and management. And I like to think of us as the little engine that keeps on keeping on. And I'll talk more about that if I get the chance a little later. So through these priorities, we work to develop and make visible health promotion as a unique discipline and profession of the broader public health umbrella, We have branches that represent each state and territory and provide local perspectives and action which complement our national activities. Together with our members and partners from a broad range of sectors, ARPA delivers activities ranging from professional development, such as the events you're attending today, mentoring, traineeships, networking, campaigns, position statements, and workforce planning. ARPA is also the national accreditation organisation for the International Union for Health Promotion and Education, RUHPE, in Australia, and manages workforce registration as well as supporting university course accreditation in health promotion. And we also manage the Health Promotion Journal of Australia, which many of you may have published in over the years. And currently, and with full disclosure, ARPA has received funding under the Australian Government's Health Peak and Advisory Bodies Program 2022 to 2025. And under this funding, we are currently establishing health promotion, education and training programs in non-traditional sectors, a national pilot of our long-standing WA trainee program with Healthway, and leadership and governance programs to support our emerging leaders. Our efforts here are designed to support the objectives of the National Preventive Health Strategy. So as I wrap up, it's encouraging to see Australian organisations take part in Global Public Health Week. Now more than ever, I think we need to consider our social and ecological compact, deep recognition of our place in the world and our impact on it, but the opportunities as well afforded to us by being a meaningful player in our global public health community. I think we need to lead with open arms, hearts and minds. This is no time for empire building or siloed practice. The threats to the public's health are real and they are urgent. So I think that the theme of my comments today will in part relate to the title of this presentation, specifically to the new challenges bit. And it's my observation, as the old saying goes, or an approximation of it, that there's nothing new under the sun. So in relation to public health, perhaps the old is once more modern, and that our challenges are not all that new, but perhaps more accelerated, more visible, more pronounced, more global, more catastrophic. And this brings to mind a quote from Sontag, who wrote, "Apocalypse is now a long-running serial, not apocalypse now, but apocalypse from now on." And I know that this could sound gloomy, and I don't mean to be, because as those who know me will hopefully attest, staying the course and a dash of optimism provides an opportunity for hope. As Rebecca Solnit says, hope in the dark and in the margins. And as Grain and Lund have argued, critical hope provides a space in which those invested in social justice, which is central to our work, may concurrently consider both the despairing events of our current historical moment, along with the varied, often unjust histories of those involved, while also moving forward with the development of programs and partnerships that may well generate changes that decrease suffering and dismantle unjust structures. And I believe that this just might be our mission. So I hope my experiences mean I have some modest insights to share today. I certainly acknowledge I still have much to learn, and I look forward to hearing from Rebecca, Taran, and all of you in our discussions there. And I will leave it there. Thank you. Over to you, Taran.
Thanks very much, Gemma, and thanks to Holly and both Rebeccas. Really fantastic to join you from Wajak Noongar Buja, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of a great Australian, one of the greatest Australians from the Northern Territory today. I've had the privilege of being on his country for some time, and it was with great sadness that I learnt of his passing. And I'm sure you will all recognise who I'm speaking about, and his incredible set of contributions, which will form part of the history of this country from the Yirrkala Bark petition onwards to the present day. I'd like to speak about the Public Health Association of Australia, its membership, what we do, and then use that as a little bit of a bridge to thinking about what that means for our conception of what public health is, and also how we then train our workforce. So let's start with the basic facts of the Public Health Association. It's approximately 2,000 members now, and I talked with Terry Slevin just before coming on, the CEO of PHAA, and we don't know how big the public health workforce broadly is. And of course, that then begs the question, well, who counts as part of the public health workforce? And we've never really agreed to that. There is a major national consultancy going on at the moment, commissioned by the Commonwealth Department of Health. So it'll be interesting where they land. but broadly speaking, you can think of people in the public health workforce as those who count themselves and see themselves as predominantly public health workers, those who would say they contribute to public health in some way without identifying as public health professionals, and those in other sectors who may well be doing the fundamental work on the determinants of health, but would not call themselves public health professionals in any way, or not even see the connection, to be honest. So our colleagues in education, housing, etc. The 2,000 members of PHAA, and again, this is a great collegial group of associations coming together. I'm also a long-standing member of ARPA and the Australian Faculty of Public Health Medicine, so we need all of us and all of our different associations. But speaking about PHAA, I can say that's what characterises our members is we're joiners. So I don't know how big the public health workforce is in Australia, but I do know that everyone who joined our association has paid money for the benefit of doing voluntary work for the sake of others, which is that's Terry's definition, and it's a true definition, which shows the kind of care and commitment people have to public health. And of course, it is the multidisciplinary association, and that's why I've spent 30 years with my primary commitment to PHAA, because I fundamentally believe in the multidisciplinarity of public health. That includes other disciplines which are not traditionally public health, who have all got something to contribute. And it's wonderful to see people with skills in economics or arts or whatever it is coming to public health and making a difference. And that's part of the future of public health as well. So just thinking about the range of activities our association does, there's a kind of a magic pudding effect. There's 10 people in our national office, not all in Canberra, but it's the 2,000 members who are, and their voluntary efforts that combine with the incredible efforts of our paid staff that creates an incredible array of work for PHAA. And so just some highlights includes the journals, so the Australian New Zealand Journal of Public Health, which shows our commitment to scholarship and research. The incredible set of conferences we run right the way through the year, which is about learning from each other and valuing talking to each other, and the fact that we are, like Gemma said, all on a continuous journey of learning. But also, of course, the advocacy work we do, which is really broad and extensive. So there are 18 special interest groups in Public Health Association, all which focus on different aspects of public health, whether it's women's health or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, etc. But there's also then the 6 state and 2 territory branches. So people choose to contribute either at a branch level or at a SIG level, or through other ways, through their membership fees. And that then allows us to do a whole range of advocacy around the breadth of public health. So you have an enormously diverse workforce and an enormously diverse set of issues, and then we've got to focus our advocacy in different ways. And sometimes it's at federal elections. You'll see us advocating prior to last year's May election, but also now very, very deliberately before each state election and territory election as well. You'll see the advocacy built on a huge policy platform, which we update every year. We also write multiple submissions to government and to special inquiries and commissions, etc., all the way through the year. We're very much committed to equity, and we've just had our Reconciliation Action Plan adopted and accepted by Reconciliation Australia. And we also go across the breadth of the workforce from the beginning with students and young people to the people like myself. It is a large house, and everybody's contribution is important. And there's obviously a very strong communications focus and active links with the World Federation of Public Health Associations. So I'm on the Governing Council, and there are various working groups, and there's many Australians, many of whom are in PHAA, who contribute internationally through those working groups and otherwise. So I hope I've given you a bit of a flavour about the diversity of the workforce, diversity of the tasks. And I just want to leave with one point, which is there is one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they think there is one public health view or a single unitary notion of what public health is. And so people will, tweet, why doesn't Public Health Association say this about this? And the answer is, it's not as simple as that. First of all, we'll be working in a variety of ways. There are multiple issues and multiple ways of looking at things. And the best way to think about public health is as a set of claims people make about what the issue is and what can be done about it. So the thing that makes it most interesting is that it's constantly linked into other aspects of life and society. You can't separate public health as a technical discipline which has one answer to it. It depends on your values, on what you're aiming to achieve, etc. And therefore, every time you speak as a public health person, it's a claim that you're making. And I would argue that it's not just what you say. Increasingly through COVID, people got to see inside the box of public health. And you could get any number of claims, say, around COVID and what should be done. But then people would ask, well, who's saying it and how do they get to that view? And that who and that how, the transparency of the process we use to form our opinions needs also now to be the story of public health. And the level of scrutiny on us is greater than it's ever been. And I think that's a good thing because that allows the public back into public health and allows the public to trust us, not just what we say, but who we are, what we say our claim is, and how did we come to make that claim. Thanks very much, Holly and Beck.
Thank you so much, Taran and the rest of the panelists. That was a wonderful overview and hopefully contextualizes and as Taran said, showcases the diversity of public health and health promotion. So let's dive into the questions. The first of the 4 themes to explore today is the current state of public health and health promotion. So of course, naturally, understanding where we are now is integral to planning for the future. So the first question, and I'd like all of you to answer this, please. I might start with you, Rebecca, is what are the challenges facing health promotion and public health in Australasia? And based on these challenges, what opportunities exist?
Well, I mean, that's a huge question, isn't it? I mean, I think we could each of us talk for about 2 hours on, just let alone the challenges. I will try and keep it brief though. And thank you very much to Gemma and Taran for those introductions. We do have some big challenges. And again, we do have big public health challenges that face the community. We all know climate change, huge public health challenge that is facing all of us. We have huge challenges post-COVID. We've seen increasing medicalisation of the health system post-pandemic. We've seen much more of a focus on health protection, more investment in delivery of acute care services. We see real challenge because of the challenges in primary care and in the health workforce in general. We're seeing more resources allocated to that. And we really are at great risk of losing the hard-earned gains we've made over many decades on NCDs, in injuries and critical prevention work lost because of the focus on the pandemic. We also see ongoing challenges due to the commercial determinants of health, so risks to the community because of partnerships and funding and the success of in promotion of tobacco, alcohol, gambling, the car industry. There's so many aspects when we start thinking about the commercial determinants of health. They impact everything that we do, and they really are a major threat to public health, as we all know. And all of those things are things that public health practitioners need to be fighting. We also see big challenges in terms of public health, and when we think about health professionals, and with my CAFEA hat on, We see barriers in access to public health education. So we see barriers in entry to training, access to public health training. There's a real equity gap there. The people who can afford to do public health degrees tend to be people who can afford it, people who are already middle class, trained in the area. Commonwealth supported places are often allocated to people who score highly on the various academic criteria. So if you've got a medical degree, if you've got work experience, you're more likely to get, and you've come from a good university, you're more likely to get a Commonwealth supported place, giving you subsidised access to postgraduate training in public health. That is a huge equity issue for people coming from community settings, people from diverse communities, from marginalised communities, people with really diverse experience who would make truly wonderful public health professionals are actually then barred and sort of shut out of the system. So that's one thing. We have barriers to practice. Again, we need more opportunities. We have fewer opportunities for entry-level roles into public health. So when people retrain, or if people are interested in working in public health, the pathways are not so clear. And we have barriers of expertise, taking people to the next level, even people who've got degrees in public health, whether they're undergraduate or postgraduate, how do they move into roles in public health? We only have one really formal public health officer training program, that in New South Wales, which has been very well developed and very successful. We've had other pilot programs in Victoria and WA, but there will be challenges in establishing them and funding them. We need to make sure we all advocate for those. So there is a need to actually look at entry level pathways and training opportunities. As Taran said, though, the public health workforce is incredibly diverse, and I think we need to be really mindful that public health is not just about health, and it's just about health professionals. If we actually talk about public health, what it is, we need to think about policy, people who are specialists in policy, health economists, health communication specialists, people obviously who are working on the ground, health promotion people working in multicultural communities on health messaging. But there's other people working in environmental health, architects working in urban design. They may not consider themselves to be public health professionals, but they're part of the public health workforce. So I think making sure that we understand and identify all of those professionals and think about the way in which we can work together to address the issues of the major issues of public health that faces. I might just let everyone else just talk about the challenges first before we move into the opportunities. That might be the best way forward, because otherwise we'll be here for hours. I might just hand over to the next speaker.
Yeah, Gemma, would you like to?
Yeah. I feel, again, I don't wish to be gloomy around the problems, because I think we have got some ideas about solutions, and I think I would echo some of Rebecca's comments around specific topics, things that relate to technology and data, misinformation, climate, wellbeing, sustainability, and the SDGs. Political literacy, I think, is critical. I think Taran touched on the notion that our public health is values driven, and there's a political dimension that we need to work to improve. Democratic participation in the face of misinformation and wobbly democracies, ongoing challenges in understanding cost and return on investment, whether that's social or fiscal. Clearly a voice for First Nations people and culturally responsive and safe ways of working. Measurement and impact, I think, is an ongoing challenge around, counting what counts and making sure that inequality is also, sort of drives our agenda. So I guess those for me are some of the things that tend to spring to mind. And I guess I'm struck by, something that we often hear from our members, which is that, for example, they want to do more on climate change, but they express uncertainty about what, say, for example, adaptation and mitigation strategies might look like in the context of their day-to-day roles, or whether they have the imprimatur to take action in these spaces. And I think, there's a will, but sometimes we may need to try and create pathways for the way. I think I'll leave it there, because I think I'd like to get to the solutions. So Taran, to you.
Thanks, everyone. So that's a pretty fine list from Gemma and Rebecca. Just a couple of things I might just add on. One is around, I think there needs to be a continuing conversation about COVID and how that fits in. We're still in the midst of a public health emergency of international concern. And I think we need to continue to talk about our appropriate response and proportionate risk-based response to COVID, what that means for different groups in the population, but also what that means for the whole population as a whole to support different groups. Because there's a little bit of a risk we run about saying, yes, it's an issue for vulnerable groups, but everyone else can forget about it. I mean, that's, I think, the wrong approach. And I'm not saying anyone is specifically saying that, but the net effect surely should be that we all need to bear responsibility for our actions within a society which could impact on vulnerable groups, not as if vulnerable groups are everyone else and not me. So I think it's that connection between the whole population and the vulnerable groups that really needs to be solidified. And it's that sense of solidarity we have, which I think is essential to underpin a whole lot of public health responses. We don't say, well, we don't care about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues if we're not personally Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. That's not how we approach it, and never should be. So the issue of equity is absolutely critical here. The other issue of kind of related to equity is gap, and the gap between words and action. So I'm just going to say this in relation to workforce and public health investment, etc. And it goes to, you know, our day-to-day advocacy work is, you know, a much higher proportion of public health activity occurs in government than many other areas of activity. Most public health professionals are employed in government, maybe in civil society, maybe in academia, but a whole lot in government at various levels. And there have been, even in recent years, multiple words, commitments by different governments to, and including at least 3 national cabinet statements about greater investment in public health and workforce. And we have not seen that translate into numbers on a budget paper yet, anyway, which is a pretty huge gap. And yes, we also get funding through peak body funding, like ARPA, PHA has had that for some years, but it doesn't stop us having these hard conversations with the government about current investment and also, for example, future investment in a CDC. So the last priority, and again, Gemma's already mentioned this, is the fact that we all sit here, but we are global citizens. And again, we don't say the war in Ukraine doesn't affect us because we're in Australia. The world is so much more connected than that. Every international issue, we have people here who are experiencing it in real time because their friends and family are affected. So every refugee flow, every conflict, every civil war, there are people here who are experiencing it in real time, and we have responsibilities as a nation and as part of the international community and as human beings empathetic for other human beings, which is ultimately what it comes down to. And so Gemma's comments about conflict and then healthy democracies, etc., they are all incredibly relevant to us as Australians in public health. Whether that's the same as relevant to Australian public health, I'd say it is, but I think you get the point I'm making. So it's quite a challenge to have to deal with what we are kind of dealing with in our day-to-day lives here, but also think bigger than that and into the connections we need to make. And lastly, sorry, I said I'd already finished. Lastly, we need to work much faster, particularly around climate and health. In the old days, we could say, well, you know, if we're going to work on injury prevention, it takes us 10 years rather than 7 years. Well, that's still progress. Well, winning slowly is losing for climate action. And that's, I think, a reality. And we have not developed the mechanisms to go faster together. And that requires new forms of collaboration and connection and new partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Taryn. That was really informative. I actually want to, before we go into the opportunities piece, I'd really like to highlight that what you believe as some of the translatable findings from the recent review you did of the Queensland Public Health, because naturally that systems approach, and also you mentioned around walking the talk. We don't want something to sit on the shelf. So I'd love to hear about that.
Thank you. So I was recently lucky enough to be asked to provide a 10-year roadmap for public health in Queensland. And so that final report is just out. So if you Google my name plus Queensland Public Health Review, it'll come up. So it's out. The response from the Queensland government is hopefully will come out in the next few weeks. So separate my review from their response, which is actually quite a good way as a reviewer to work. The key findings are, one, it's an incredible privilege to be able to take one's experience, then apply it in a different context. So I haven't worked previously in Queensland, so taking my experience from the NT and WA to Queensland clearly is different. And that's part of the beauty of public health, is when you shift the issue or shift the context, shift the history, the institutions, the players, things do change. But there are some key themes which I think you can apply across public health systems. So I would say that essentially all public health systems in Australia are decentralised to some extent, and Queensland is well and historically decentralised for at least the last 10 years. Some systems, such as Victoria, are moving there in recent years. And so again, it's about government and how government works. I won't go into all of that, but how you make a decentralised system work with enough central coordination and system management, whilst allowing for local areas to have their autonomy. So that's the first kind of part of the review. But a second and more kind of fundamental issue is how we describe public health, which is around, for me, the bottom line is we need to talk about risk management in public health. So public health for me is promoting health, preventing disease, and managing risk. We manage risk every day, particularly in environmental health, communicable disease, disasters, climate action, etc., etc., etc. But we don't talk about managing risk as part of the fundamentals of public health. Once you do that and you introduce it into the highest levels of your definitions of public health, it flows through to priorities and planning and being able to communicate what we do to others who may not know about public health, but definitely know about risk management. And then COVID is seen not just as a health event, but as a, for example, a low probability, high consequence event, which you can think about in different terms. And in fact, everyone in the world has thought about it in those terms. So it's quite interesting to write that review and have some of the kind of ideas that I put together for many, many years, kind of theoretical ideas, but you can see where they have an impact in terms of our recommendations about system reform. And essentially, we haven't come down to a set of, and I worked with a couple of fantastic colleagues from Queensland Health. We haven't come down to a simple set of, here's a set of KPIs, and if you do this, you'll be fine. But this is really complex. This is how it's complex. But these are ways you could move forward within that and navigate a way through the complexity. And this is what I would do first. And then then you need to be flexible and adaptable in terms of what you do after that. But it's not easy, and it requires an understanding of complex systems and complex change processes and social change and our professional identities and all of the above to navigate this path successfully. So sounds very complicated. There is a roadmap, which is a few pages, which you can just look at. And then if you want to get into the detail, there's a detailed final report, which is also out, which has kind of more food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Taryn. That was really helpful. And I love that point about essentially talking in the language of the people that you're addressing it to, and that risk that risk lens is much more consumable, particularly to decision makers and those who have, you know, who are concerned about the initial burden of cost, etc. So that is a very practical tip, and also dare I say, an opportunity as well. And so, Gemma, I just like, if you think one opportunity that you think really exists for us as health promotion and public health professionals, what would it be?
One. All right, I'm going to use someone else's words, and I think this is, to me, it speaks to the role of strengthened institutions, strong and strengthened institutions that are free from the influence of harmful vested interests, but include our academic institutions, which I think could sometimes benefit from re-engaging with their social mission. And this is for two reasons, and this is words that are not mine, they're Daniel Coit-Gilman's. One, that the noblest duty of a university is to advance knowledge and to diffuse it not merely amongst those who can attend the daily lectures, but far and wide. And I think this speaks to Rebecca's comment earlier about the inequality of access to education. So I think we need to do more there. And secondly, to think about the role of institutions such as universities. He says it's a reaching out for a better state of society than now exists. It means a wish for less misery amongst the poor, less ignorance in schools, less bigotry in the temple, less suffering in the hospital, less fraud in business, less folly in politics, more lessons from history, more health in cities, more wisdom in legislation, more happiness. And I think there is something to be gained in re-engaging our social mission in the university spaces to close the gap on who has access to education, both in Australia and in our region, but also to fundamentally do good for the public's health. Thanks.
Nailed it. That's very true. And exactly as you say, universities are complex systems and are certainly subject to the systemic challenges that all large organisations and systems are, subject to as well. So we could talk about this all day. So I think it would be great, though, to move on to how do we prepare to move into our desired future state. And for this component, I'll be handing over to Rebecca.
Fantastic. Thank you, Holly. That was quite challenging, Gemma, to think of one priority there. Well done. I think Holly, like all of us, has an eye to the time. And I just would like to take this opportunity just to remind people we have got some time at the end of the session earmarked for questions. So please do jump into the Q&A section and add some questions there. Unfortunately, you can't verbalise them, but we can come back to them and ask the panelists on your behalf. So we've talked a bit about challenges. We know there are many, and we've talked a little bit very briefly about solutions. Feel free to come back and talk about some of those in your future responses, everyone. But the next question really is about what we're working towards and what the respective associations are doing to work towards that. And it's an opportunity, I might throw to you first, Gemma, to talk a little bit about ARPA in this instance and what the association is doing, but also what the ARPA members and others, like opportunities for them to get involved and take action on an individual level as well. So over to you, Gemma, and then it'll be Taryn on behalf of PHAA, and then Rebecca Ivers. Thank you.
No small questions this afternoon, Rebecca, only big questions. All right. So I think Taryn has made a compelling argument in his opening remarks about the role of associations, and I probably don't need to revisit that. But I do pick up a couple of key things about associations. They have a role to play in articulating what public health is, and according to Taryn's comments, who does it and how, and to advocate when members and organisations may be unable to due to their funding or governance arrangements. And I think we've seen that in Australian context where that's been really, really important. As well, in particular, as a more umbrella organisation, groups like PHAA, I think are really excellent in representing and connecting a diverse range of stakeholders and professions. And that's really, really important. I think professional associations are also well positioned for advocacy, though I would be the first to say that from an ARPA perspective, our advocacy ambitions often outstrip our resources. We are therefore needing to extend our reach by building and sometimes I think rebuilding relationships with like-minded organisations, some of whom are working in less traditional public health areas, and I think to our broader determinants mandate there. So that means we need to establish different ways of working that means we can participate in advocacy efforts around determinants and workforce structure systems and investment, and that's really where we've narrowed our efforts into those areas. I would also echo that working with government is key and something that we could do better in some jurisdictions at different periods of time. I think making sure governments acknowledge the role that professional associations can bring to the table for public health and vice versa is really, really important. I think our key role is that we're trying to develop clear pathways for health promotion practice over the lifetime of a career in public health. And that's really through working with universities, employers. And I think that's probably all I want to say is, apart from participation in public health is really, really key. I was struck by Taryn's comment, we're joiners in public health, and joining and contributing means that we have more pairs of hands, and more pairs of hands are always extremely welcome. And I think it provides opportunities for new learning and different ways of knowing when we can do those things collaboratively. That's it.
Thanks, Gemma. I'll invite Taryn to now speak on behalf of PHAA and more broadly.
Thanks, Rebecca. I suppose I'd say that if we knew the answer to that, we'd already be doing it, which is kind of a funny way of saying, because the greatest change will come from people joining and contributing their own ideas at whatever level, at whatever scale they're at, whether they're working locally or or regionally or at a national level or international level. We're all in public health and we can all make the difference we can make and only we can make. And that's the key, that's why joining is so important, because the current system isn't working as well as we want it to, because we have this idea about change, but we don't know how to get there. And we don't have to have the answers for everything. We just have to have an idea, or even if we don't have an idea, we could find someone else's idea and we can then offer to support them. And so once you've joined, you can then just basically contribute. You can just say, how can I help? I reckon, Gemma, you've got this thing really, really going really well, or I want to help Rebecca in injury prevention, but I don't know what to do. Can you guide me in the right direction and I'll help you? And once you're helping, once you're part of the activity, once you're doing whatever you're doing, you then might be able to be more confident to contribute your own ideas about X, Y, or Z. And I suppose that's why I just stress the importance of, for PHAA, having vibrant branches and special interest groups, but many of them are kind of latent from time to time because there's not enough energy in those groups or branches. And you have to wait for a little bit of critical mass for people to then bring that up again. And that's fine because, that's how the world is. But it just shows the importance of a critical mass of individuals thinking together about how to do something differently. So it can't all be top down. Here are the opportunities. It's also got to be peer-peer. And that's why professional organizations are so good, because it's really good about sharing with peers. And then the thing we've got to be better at is also ground up, which is how do our professional organizations connect with community groups, etc., and bring some of those ideas up. So a lot of the climate action is not by professional groups, but by community coattails, and that's entirely appropriate. So I don't have a set of answers, but I think somewhere in that process of networking, joining, helping each other, someone's going to have a good idea and the rest of us can get around it. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thanks for that inspirational response, Taryn. Over to you, Rebecca Ivers.
Well, thank you. So I think coming back to thinking again, The question is, what is from a CAFIA perspective, what the public health workforce of the future might actually look like and how the association actually helps us to get there. I think being mindful that public health often is about legislative change, it's about policy change. So part of the challenge is actually, and the solutions are actually making sure that we have public health literate policymakers, legislators, politicians. So again, for all of us and all of our associations and for all of us here, we all know that actually making sure that our politicians are public health literate, but also recognising, as I said earlier, the multidisciplinary nature of the workforce. Again, knowing that public health and having public health expertise in all aspects of government and life is really important. I mean, I think Emily Banks said public health is the answer to just about everything, and I think we all recognise that, but ensuring people actually understand what the issues are. And of course, public health's not about individual behaviour change, and certainly, you know, there's always that challenge that we always focus about coming back to, if you only could change your behaviour, you know, we wouldn't have all these issues. Coming back to systems level approaches, and all of our roles, and certainly CAFI's role, is actually ensuring that our public health workforce is trained to understand the importance of leadership and policymakers understanding that, ensuring that we get the right people through training, and that might be through undergraduate degrees, postgraduate degrees, or lifelong learning, getting people access to the right kind of, you know, public health content, but also recognise the diversity of our multidisciplinary public health workforce. Because as I said before, it's not just about health professionals. The public health profession has data analysts, people that have probably never done a Master of Public Health, health economists, or just economists, people that do the cost effectiveness, look at, you know, the cost of public health interventions, and people that cost prevention and actually show the benefits of investing in prevention over other interventions. Arguably, people like that sitting in Treasury, again, who may never have done a public health degree, are critical to public health. Political scientists, understanding how the system works. Political scientists, qualitative researchers, you know, people working in health promotion are all really important, as well as health professionals. But it is a diverse workforce, and all of us need to recognise that and ensure that we have appropriate pathways. And CAFIA does that. Part of our role is to make sure we do have a well-trained profession, that our degrees are quality, that people have access to good training and good diverse training, and recognising, as I said, public health training comes in many different shapes and sizes. It's wonderful to see that public health training is now starting early. I mean, it's good to see curricula in schools. If you have a look at what used to be what us old people called PE in secondary school, PDHBE now in New South Wales, actually, if you look at the curriculum now, it's very much about epidemiology and public health, and it's promoting some of those great concepts of public health to people in secondary school who then want to go on to careers in public health. We as CAFIA need to ensure our graduates are well prepared for the future, make sure we are recognising that diversity and giving them training, the pathways, the industry experience, and the opportunities when they graduate, but also opportunities for lifelong learning and opportunities to upskill people that are never going to do a Master of Public Health or a degree in health promotion or a PhD, but are really important contributors to the workforce, and making sure all of us recognise that lived experience. Public health is not about a top-down approach. It's not about, you know, giving people advice. It's actually about doing things in partnership with communities. And I think one of the great opportunities is that recognition that we need to recognise diverse lived experience. We need to recognise diverse, you know, skill sets and work with people to understand priorities and to co-design solutions and to implement and evaluate them. That's what public health, that's where public health is going to be successful, about, you know, that diversity, recognising it, working with it, and making change for the future. Lots of opportunities, partnership, working with other associations, but again, it is really understanding who the community is, who our public health community is as well, and making sure that they've got the tools to actually address the key problems that we face.
Rebecca, that was fascinating. I'm sorry, Rebecca Zoza, I'm going to jump in with something because it sparked my curiosity. So we've talked about the power of joining an association, and I love, Taran, that you said it could be your idea, it could be assisting someone else for their idea. And also this need to really work closely with our communities for both co-design and, of course, all the way through implementation and evaluation. But the other aspect that we've certainly touched on, but I'd really like to explore a little bit more detail, is the role of government in working alongside professional associations. And I will caveat that this is actually further down, but given the discussion, it makes sense to have it now. Tara, could I offer to you first for this question, please?
Thanks, Holly. I'm not sure I've thought about it very much. I mean, government's so fundamental, it's hard to kind of pick out its specific influence. If clearly, as it's a deliverer of public health services, it's an employer of our staff, it's a funder of our associations, it's the major policy authorizer, it's the implementer of regulation and the developer of it. It's in every aspect of our lives, even if you're not working for government. And it's the creator of the normative culture, if you like, that we sit in as societal members, or helps create that normative culture. Having said that, if I could just pick up a little bit on what Rebecca said quickly around PHAA, which is, I think that in terms of specific support for our workforce or our members who are in the workforce, apart from the things I mentioned at the top of the webinar, it's also around mentoring. So we run specific mentoring programs, which can be formal or informal through branches and SIGs, etc. It's about support for young people, about scholarships, about conferences and making that accessible to as many people as possible, including now we're much more conscious of our need to get to make our conferences accessible to people with a disability. For example, we were having that conversation recently, virtual, and also people can't get to events for financial other reasons. So the hybrid conferences are really taking off. There's always some trade-offs there, and we're discussing those trade-offs. But there's an opportunity to support people and get them to both contribute and learn. They also give people specific training in communications or advocacy, and then lobby for actual investment in workforce training programs. I will come up just to see whether I can get a reaction around accreditation. So I'm going to put my declare an interest here, which is I'm chair of the University of Western Australia's School of Population Global Health Advisory Board, and UWA and U Queensland are, I think, the only two universities running MPH courses which are undergoing international accreditation. I do think it's a way forward, and I'll put it as a claim, if you like, which is, and I know that Rebecca's talked about competencies, etc. It'll be very interesting to see how this plays out, but there needs to be a discussion about the value to Australia of the public being able to trust its courses and the practitioners that come out of it, and the role that accreditation plays in the nature of that claim. And you could say it's too costly and it doesn't add much to the claim and the trust that the public has in us. But I will say, I think it's an open question, and other countries have gone more strongly down the standards and accreditation line than Australia has. And it's a very interesting discussion. And at the moment, it's only a minority of universities that have gone down that path, but it might be a bigger issue for Australia. And it also goes to how we see ourselves as a profession. If we see ourselves as a multidisciplinary workforce, what binds us together? And it's presumably something to do about training in terms of what we get out of these courses. And the majority of people in PHAA have either trained in it as an MPH or PhD, or are students, the majority. But then it's also about lifelong learning. So how do you stay accredited as a professional? So I might have done something 20 years ago, but how does anyone know that I'm still up to date? And to what degree do I have to show that in order for someone to trust my current claim about X, Y, or Z? So PHA does a whole lot of things which are complementary to others, but I also think we have got a view about workforce and accreditation where we're generally supportive of that movement. Thank you.
Okay, we might just throw to Gemma. Perfect segue, Taran. Thank you. The Australian Health Promotion Association oversees a global accreditation program. So Gemma, I might throw to you to outline that program and what some of the maybe challenges and successes have been to date.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Beck and Taran. My experience will speak a little bit more strongly to health promotion as a sort of sub-discipline than it will to the broader public health. I certainly don't think it's a silver bullet, but it is one strategy to establishing consistency in our understanding of what constitutes public health practice. And I think whilst, competency models are helpful because they recognise the need for flexibility to address local context. And I think that's really, really important and something that we've learned over time in working with a model that comes out of the RUHPE, for example, and, has been built on competencies that have, found their legs in the European context, for example, to determine whether or not those are still appropriate and relevant to countries like Australia or countries in the Asia Pacific, and in the context of cultural learning and cultural ways of knowing. It's my observation that its viability depends on a number of factors. It's been embraced differently in different jurisdictions. So, countries like Ireland have picked it up and run with it from a health promotion perspective. Australia has as well. Other countries have struggled a little bit to get it going and to maintain that. And I think that's to do with institutional strength. So I know Rebecca probably will speak to this more clearly, that in Australia, the desire for credentialing of public health varies. I think the benefit is a shared language and foundation of expectation, and a more global conversation about what constitutes public health capabilities. I just, on Taran's point, acknowledge the work that Leanne and Priscilla have been doing through the World Federation of Public Health Associations Professional Education and Training Working Group, looking at this issue and how we bring those kind of competencies and credentialing models to bear. So in terms of ARPA, we are the National Accreditation Organisation. We are given that imprimatur by the International Union. It's a competency-based model for individual practitioners based on a combination of demonstration of competencies and training. And people can get there in a couple of different ways. They can get there through completing a degree at an accredited university, and there are a number of those around Australia from a health promotion perspective, or non-accredited course learning and competencies. And there's a grandfathering clause which respects and acknowledges, for example, cultural ways of knowing and learning, and people who have come to public health and health promotion from different backgrounds like education and policy, etc., etc. So that's the model. People have to demonstrate competency that's assessed by a committee across the handbook of competencies put out by the RUHPE. They have to demonstrate ongoing continuing professional education over the course of 3 years, and we provide opportunities for that to happen. So it's been a slow burn. I've been involved in this process for now about 10 years to get this up and running, but we're in good starting point because the international competencies for health promotion come out of Australia in the first instance, and I think that was helpful. Just with my course coordinator hat on, I would reflect that I can identify significant variability between courses and roles that are titled as, say, health promotion, for example. And on one hand, there are courses and roles that look nothing like any kind of contemporary health promotion that we might think is helpful in this day and age. So I think from that perspective, it's been helpful, but it does require work and consensus building and has been resource intensive, both locally and globally. But there's also been really good and significant goodwill. And I think that's really helpful. So it also may go some way to help us shape and identify kind of who's in the health promotion workforce within that broader public health workforce as well. So in the end, I'm going to sit on the fence and say that from the ARP position, I support both specialist and generalist public health and health promotion pathways, and we should have pathways and frameworks for both. Thanks, Beck.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gemma. Rebecca, would you like to follow up, picking up on Gemma's point around the desire for credentialing varying, and maybe to also touch on what universities are doing to prepare the public health workforce?
Thanks, Rebecca. CAFIA doesn't have a position on accreditation or registration because amongst our member institutions, there's no consistent view on this. There's people who've got quite divergent feelings on this. And, you know, I recognise, I recognise the strengths and the opportunities in terms of going down accreditation and registration processes. They are quite different. Accreditation of degrees and then registrations of individuals is going, you know, it's quite a long way away from the status where we are, the state where we are now. I think just being mindful at the moment that degrees, you know, education has to be reviewed at least every 7 years, according to TEXA, and you know, in tertiary education, and doing very detailed reviews. There's not great evidence of market failure in terms of our public health workforce. The Australian context is also quite different from American and European in terms of development and public health, embedded public health people being in health roles, in health departments and across other agencies as well. So we're probably a little bit further ahead than some of the other global locations where we do see accreditation. What I think we do need to be really mindful of is the cost to actually going down a pathway like that, in terms of the economic costs of setting something up, but also the cost and the cost to diversity of programs as well. As soon as you start, and again, having reflected on conversations with people who've got groups that have gone through accreditation through US systems, including US universities, accreditation of courses has also led to not only a huge amount of paperwork, but actually a reduction in the diversity of the offerings, because a lot of effort has to go into actually demonstrating competencies across the things that people are being accredited for, which reduces the opportunities to then offer diverse subjects within programs. And it can reduce, there is a possibility you would have to investigate it very carefully to make sure that you just didn't end up with a very, very homogenous degree. The other part of it is, of course, is that what are you actually accrediting and what are you actually looking at? As we've said, public health workforce is diverse, and I think it might be that registration for public health professionals, public health physicians, people who want accreditation because they're used to that because of their other health professional backgrounds, is something that's seen as very attractive, but it could be a significant it could be something that actually significantly bars access to public health positions for people that don't come from a health professional background. And I think we need to be really mindful about that, just in terms of both. I mean, that's more for the registration. I think that's really important to think about that, and make sure that we are reflecting anything that we're going, when we start investigating this, we are actually being reflective of what the public health workforce is, who they are. As I said, they're not just people that hold public health. They're not just people who are members of PHA or CAFIA or the Health Promotion Association. There's a whole range of other people that work in public health. So what we don't want to do is set up a system where we then create an environment where public health jobs are only open to people that have actually got accredited degrees and registered as public health practitioners, because we run the risk then of actually pushing out people with multidisciplinary experience and lived experience, but also creating huge equity bars, creating equity issues for people in the workforce as well. So I think we need to be really mindful of that and look at what are the costs, not just economic, but everything. we need to look at evidence that there's something that's going to benefit us. So I'd be really interested to hear with health promotion how that's actually changed the workforce. I completely understand there are degrees and there's courses that have got different content, but I think we need to be mindful about, are there other ways to actually improve content and support those programs without going down accreditation pathways. So I think what CAFE is doing is certainly with the competencies, allowing universities to actually then potentially self-test themselves against the competencies is something that we're looking at. But I also think about the other the other things that we need to be focusing on as well, which are entry-level roles and lifelong learning, which I think we can also do without necessarily going down the pathway of accreditation and registration for professionals. So I think we're absolutely happy to look at that. And again, I think we all need to be open to what do we actually need. But I think we need to actually also reflect on the public health workforce and what it needs and where we are at the moment. If we're going to put energy into things, is this something that we would like to that we want to put energy into? There's certainly opportunities, and I can see in the comments that people are talking about they want, the sense of global public health community from Colleen and others, confidence in what we're doing as public health professionals. That's true, but as long as we're bringing everyone along to the party as well, and we're not using this as a way to actually increase market value for certain areas of the public health workforce and barring others. And I think that's something that I think we all need to be very mindful of, and actually have a bit of reflexivity about our own positions and training and what accreditation is doing to actually support the diversity and the multidisciplinary nature of the public health workforce.
Thanks, Rebecca. A great illustration, I think, of Taran's earlier point around there being different views in public health. So thank you for that. I'll pass over to you, Holly, for our final question and panelists' closing remarks before we move on to audience questions. If people do have questions, please pop them in the Q&A box now, because we will have at least 10 minutes to address them. Thank you.
Sure. I think what I'll do, we've covered a little bit about actually a lot of the unique need for professional associations. All of you spoke, all the panelists spoke really wonderfully about that, and similarly around how we can come together to strengthen and refine our position to that kind of thing. What I might do is reframe the final question before we ask us some closing remarks and then go to audience questions, is for one suggestion about how we, from each of the panelists, for how we can further strengthen our efforts together. So what is something that we could come together and do to advance our voice together? Rebecca, I might start with you. You're muted.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again, Holly?
Yeah, sure. So the question is around one recommendation you would have, or one idea perhaps, for how we as associations can work together to enhance our voice and further advocate for increased investment in public health and health promotion.
Thanks, Holly. Look, I think we all know each other well, and I think we already work across networks. I think what's really important is that we share the advocacy and the communication, and that we actually go to government with a joint voice. That's really important. We need to agree on, we all agree, I think all of us agree on the need for better public health training pathways and entry-level roles, more opportunity for internships and work integrated learning. And I think coming together with, health promotion, public health, CAFIA, and actually making sure, and other agencies, as other peak bodies as well, to actually go to government and say, well, this is what we're calling for. It's really, and it's particularly important at this point in time. We've got new governments. We can see that we've got, Labor governments across all states, territories apart from Tasmania at the moment. It's a real opportunity as well to actually make sure that we have a joint voice. And certainly we know that many voices together are really powerful. We do have a whole lot of new preventative health strategies and public health strategies, none of which, and but very few have got funded implementation and action plans and KPIs. they're things on which we should be advocating together very strongly and very loudly now, because again, all governments, I mean, governments for many years, and certainly my injury prevention hat on, we've had injury prevention strategies for literally decades. Injury has been a national priority for literally decades. We have never had funded action plans under any of the strategies. I think that we're in real danger of seeing the National Preventative Health Strategy remain largely unfunded. Certainly all the other health strategies that we've seen many millions of dollars be developed remain largely unfunded. These are the kind of things that all of our peak bodies should be getting together and working with urgently to actually, advocate for funding for prevention and for public health. So I think we've got amazing opportunities here right now.
Karen, I might throw to you because PHA is certainly in the forefront of advocating for don't leave it on the shelf and collect dust around the National Preventive Health Strategy. Do you have anything further to add in that sort of space?
Thank you, Holly. I do think we work very well together as it is, so just acknowledging that. And it all starts pretty much with voluntary effort. And so we need to maximize our differences and our expertise in different areas. We can't and shouldn't seek to lead on everything. So we should identify a leader and then get behind each other. So we just don't have enough effort and resources for not to need each other, you know what I mean? So we're very comfortable, and I think we're doing that quite well. We'll identify a leader and then we'll get the other organisations behind. So that's a good strategy. We're already joined together, once every 4 years around the Australian Population Health Congress, and we did that last year, which is really good. And I do think our comms is getting better and better, and I think that's an area in which it's a natural integration of our associations, because we have to agree, do we agree to this position statement? What are we going to do? How will we get it out through our networks? All our networks are importantly different. And it gives us a chance to really talk to the public and engage with the public around who we are, what we do, what difference are we claiming we can make? I mean, I think that's important, but also more into the future, who are our opponents? Because if we're going to be active on commercial determinants of health, we actually have to call some of this stuff out together, because you can be picked off one by one if you're not coherent in terms of understanding the commercial proponents of the commercial determinants of health, if you like. And so whether that's in climate change or non-communicable disease or whatever it is, there are very, very powerful, well-funded lobbies, and we need to maximize the kind of the ideas and the truth that is within our systems, not the money or the influence, but the power of the truthful idea that underpins it. And we need all of our associations to work together. That requires quite sophisticated comms, but I think we're getting better at that. And we've got some very, very good people in all our associations who are helping us with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Taryn. And Gemma, did you have any great strategy that you think we're missing so far?
Not sure about great. I would just echo both Rebecca and Taryn's comments about continuing to work well together to capitalise on the opportunities, the points of strength that we have, and shared strength, but also the points of difference that each organisation can bring to the table, both within Australia, but in our region. I kind of just want to keep the global focus as important as well. I think Taryn's point about the communication speaks to the art and science of public health, and I think we could attend to that a little bit more strongly. This is also to Rebecca's comment earlier about the lived experience, and I think, statistics are people with the tears washed off, so we still need some capabilities to contextualise those tears and remember the human and the public in the public's health. So attending to the social, working together, and also I think identifying and raising up our next generation of public health leaders. We really need to kind of grab them strongly and sit them at the tables where some of these conversations are happening, so they feel part of that and feel ready to lead. I think is critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. That's so important. And we have had a couple of questions in the chat about, I'm an early student, but I have great lived experience. There's lots of opportunities. So please connect with all of us. We can help you with that. And certainly students have a big place to play. So thank you kindly. So I'll hand over to Beck. I'm sorry, we only have a couple of minutes of questions. We have been trying to do it in the chat as well.
I think we've got time for one. So, because we do need to finish on time, which is in 5 minutes. So might just pick up on the question which asked around how we increase political public health literacy. So the public health literacy of our policymakers, decision makers, which all of our panelists have touched on to some degree today. The question was about some really pragmatic recommendations for increasing their public health literacy. And I think someone, Holly, I think you'd already answered in the chat with Kathy's suggestions around micro-credentials, so thank you. Rebecca, did you have anything to add to that? And I'm going to give panelists 30 seconds, so we'll have to just a quick response, please.
Look, I think the easiest way to actually increase literacy is actually to show the economic benefits. So to make sure that we have good economic studies that actually show the benefits of investing in prevention and what that actually how that actually has impacted, transforms community health.
Fabulous. Gemma, and then Taryn.
I think on top of that, I think establishing and maintaining really strong relationships and building relationships with politicians, going out, having conversations, being available for comment, and being a go-to kind of vehicle to have honest conversations about these issues is important. So those personal relationships.
Fabulous. Thank you. Taryn?
Make it simple. So in terms of public health, I reduced it to 6 words, which is promote health, prevent disease, manage risk. And that's about as much as anyone can remember, so that's fine with me. I was thinking about health promotion. For me, it's about surviving and thriving. And that's pretty hard stuff, So surviving is increased quantity of life and thriving is increased quality of life. And it's keeping it simple in terms of what you're offering. And I think that's what health promotion does, to be honest. And I'm going to finish with a plug, which is on Wednesday, I'll be interviewing Professor Vivian Lin on why institutions matter. Vivian is, when I first met her, was PHAA's policy vice president. She's an absolute policy guru, but has done amazing stuff in the 25 years since, including working for WHO for a long time. And I'll be interviewing her on why institutions matter on Wednesday, midday Australian Eastern Standard Time, registered through the PHAA website. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks,
I just popped the link to that event in the chat box for anyone who's interested. I love that you've condensed public health into 6 words and health promotion into 3. Incredible. Over to you, Holly, to close.
Thank you so much. I think it's safe to say that we could be here for years, just about, with our wonderful panelists and all of you as our audience members across health promotion and public health. We wanted to say thank you and to reinforce we are recording this. We'll be sending it out within a week or so. And also what we'll be trying to do is a bit of a takeaway as well. So let's keep the conversation going. We'll certainly be identifying more opportunities to work together as professional associations and of course as individuals. We strongly encourage you to sign up to your relevant institution, but also for those folks out there, sometimes you don't realise you're also already benefit from CAFIA membership by if you're a member of a number of universities, and similar for both PHA and ARPA. So thank you so much for all of your time, your expertise, particularly to our wonderful panelists, and also to Rebecca for co-moderating. It's been a joy working with you on this. Let's keep the conversation going, and I hope to see you on some of the other Global Public Health Week events across the week. Thank you and bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.